What if I told you the deadliest thing in a Wild West saloon wasn't a gunfight, it was what you ate? Forget duels at high noon. The real gamble was on your plate. Mystery stews, pickled eggs in cloudy jars, and oysters that could kill you. Today, we're uncovering the shocking, dangerous truth about what cowboys really ate in those dusty saloons. In the early 1900s, the Wild West saloons stood as the beating heart of every boomtown, outnumbering churches and often serving as the first permanent structures in settlements carved from untamed wilderness. They were more than drinking halls. They were community centers, news hubs, and most importantly, they were kitchens, feeding an army of fortune seekers with whatever ingredients the harsh frontier could provide. The Western saloon culture flourished during those pivotal decades, bridging the 1800s and 1900s. Waves of homesteaders, miners, and railroad workers were transforming vast, unforgiving landscapes into bustling settlements. Most patrons were single men, isolated from family and comfort, working back-breaking jobs on railroads, ranches, or in mines. Now one might assume that they came to saloons just for whiskey and card games, but here is the twist. It was not just the whiskey or the card games that made them visit the saloons often, but it was mostly human connection and, crucially, for hot food that could restore their strength for another day of grueling labor. The atmosphere was indeed rowdy. These were places where men of various backgrounds mingled, though societal prejudices still created segregated establishments for different ethnic groups. Entertainment ranged from dance performances to high-stakes poker, and bartenders weren't just drink mixers. They were esteemed professionals, sometimes called professors, who doubled as security and entertainment coordinators. Before we dive into the food, we need to paint an honest picture of saloon conditions. Hygiene in the 1900s. Wild West was, to put it mildly, non-existent by today's standards. Sawdust-covered floors, not for decoration, but to absorb spilled beer, tobacco spit, and worse, spittoons dotted every corner, though accuracy was questionable, leaving floors sticky and gritty underfoot. Public towels hung along bars for wiping beer foam. These were rarely washed and became breeding grounds for disease. Smoking and chewing tobacco were universal, adding to the grime and stench. With no health codes to speak of, diseases like tuberculosis and pneumonia spread rapidly through widespread spitting and coughing. Some towns eventually passed ordinances forbidding public spitting, but enforcement was another matter entirely. In this harsh environment, certain foods emerged as heroes of frontier dining, and none were more important than stews. These thick, nourishing concoctions could stretch meager supplies to feed dozens of hungry patrons, while providing the calories needed for hard physical labor. Buffalo stew reigned supreme among these hearty offerings. Chunks of lean buffalo meat, a protein source that roamed free across the plains, slowly simmered with whatever root vegetables were available. Potatoes, carrots, and onions formed the foundation, while wild herbs like sage and thyme, gathered from the prairie itself, added complexity. If the cook was feeling generous or the saloon was prosperous, a shot of whiskey might find its way into the pot, creating depth and richness that could make even the weariest traveler pause in appreciation. Mutton stew represented another practical solution to frontier dining challenges. made from older, tougher sheep. Mutton required patience and skill to transform into something palatable. Saloon cooks would sear chunks of mutton to develop flavor, then simmer them slowly with whatever broth they could muster. Root vegetables and sometimes barley or dumplings stretched the dish further, while wild herbs added whatever flavor the cook could coax from the ingredients. These stews were served in wooden bowls or tin cups, accompanied by thick slices of bread for soaking up every drop of the precious liquid. Nothing went to waste on the frontier. If stews were the soul of saloon fare, beans were its backbone. Cheap, filling, and with an almost supernatural ability to last without spoiling, beans formed the foundation of frontier nutrition. The preferred preparation was a slow, smoky bake that could feed a crowd and fill bellies for hours. The process began with dried beans, usually navy or pinto varieties, soaked overnight to soften. These were then combined with molasses for sweetness, onions for depth, and chunks of bacon or salted pork for richness and flavor. The mixture was seasoned with whatever spices were available: mustard, cloves, black pepper, and slow baked for hours until the beans were tender and the flavors had melded into something greater than the sum of their parts. Cowboys would scoop beans directly from communal pots, eating them alongside sourdough bread or washing them down with beer. Sometimes whiskey found its way into the pot for added complexity, and regional variations included chili peppers, when available, or wild herbs gathered from the surrounding landscape. But beans weren't confined to dinner. They appeared at breakfast too, often paired with fried eggs or served alongside thick slices of bread. They were the reliable constant in an unpredictable world. Fresh meat was a luxury on the frontier, so preservation became an art form born of necessity. Salt pork represented the pinnacle of this craft. Pork cuts rubbed with salt, sugar, and sometimes pepper or cloves, then cured for days until the meat could survive without refrigeration. The concentrated flavor of salt pork made it incredibly versatile. It could be fried up for breakfast, added to bean pots for richness, or incorporated into stews for depth. Before cooking, the meat was often soaked to remove excess salt, then prepared in whatever way the situation demanded. In regions where game was abundant, saloons offered roasted meats that showcased the bounty of the American wilderness. Venison, rabbit, quail, and wild turkey were roasted over open flames or in cast iron ovens with just salt, pepper, and whatever wild herbs the cook could forage. Larger cuts like wild boar might be slow roasted on spits, filling the saloon with enticing aromas that promised a feast. Jerky represented the ultimate in preserved meat, strips of beef or bison, heavily salted and air-dried until they achieved an almost indefinite shelf life. While primarily travel food, saloons sometimes offered jerky as a snack or addition to other dishes. Perhaps no single food item captures the essence of Wild West saloon culture like pickled eggs. These became visual icons of the era, large glass jars filled with pale orbs floating in cloudy brine, sitting prominently on every bar. The process was deceptively simple, but required patience. Hard-boiled eggs were peeled and submerged in a brine of vinegar, water, salt, and sugar, enhanced with spices like garlic, dill, or mustard seed. Sometimes beet juice was added for color, creating eggs with a distinctive pink hue that became their own frontier delicacy. These eggs marinated for days or weeks, absorbing the bold, tangy flavors of the brine while developing an extended shelf life that made them perfect for unpredictable frontier conditions. They were cheap, filling, and paired perfectly with a shot of whiskey. Patrons would eat them straight from the jar, sometimes adding pepper or hot sauce for extra kick. Other pickled items like cucumbers, onions, even fish, when available, offered variety while preserving precious nutrients for the lean times that inevitably came. Wonder what was the most dangerous food item commonly served in Wild West saloons, something so lethal that it killed multiple frontier settlers? It was oysters. Fresh oysters shipped by railroad from coastal areas were considered the ultimate luxury in frontier saloons, but without proper refrigeration, these mollusks became breeding grounds for bacteria that caused cholera, typhoid, and food poisoning. Historical records show that contaminated oysters killed multiple frontier settlers, making them far more dangerous than any shootout at high noon. Wealthier patrons who could afford these delicacies were the most likely victims. Bread represented life itself in saloon culture. Sourdough, brought west by prospectors and pioneers, became the foundation of frontier dining. These weren't delicate, fluffy loaves. They were hearty, dense creations designed to provide maximum nutrition and fill hungry stomachs. Thick slices of sourdough served as edible utensils, perfect for mopping up stews, soaking up bean liquid, or simply filling the gaps when meat was scarce. The tangy flavor of properly fermented sourdough added complexity to simple meals while providing the carbohydrates needed for hard physical labor. Biscuits offered another staple, dense, sturdy creations that could survive rough handling and serve multiple purposes. They were breakfast alongside eggs and bacon, dinner companions to stews, and sometimes dinner themselves when times were particularly tough. Hominy grits represented Southern influence on frontier cuisine. Made from dried corn ground into coarse particles, grits were simmered with water or milk and finished with butter when available, sometimes enhanced with cheese or leftover meat scraps. They provided warm, comforting meals that stretched limited resources while delivering essential calories. Pies stood as occasional luxuries, proof that a saloon had both a skilled cook and access to quality ingredients. Apple, berry, or custard pies represented celebration and abundance. With flaky crusts and sweet or tart fillings, these desserts offered moments of genuine pleasure in an otherwise harsh existence. One of the most ingenious aspects of saloon culture was the free lunch, a marketing strategy that was both practical and profitable. To attract thirsty customers, saloons offered food with the purchase of drinks, creating a win-win situation that kept patrons drinking while providing necessary nutrition. These spreads varied wildly based on the saloon's prosperity and location, but they shared common characteristics. Everything was designed to be salty, encouraging more alcohol consumption. The offerings might include salted peanuts roasted in batches, smoked herring that could last for days, pickled goods of every description, cold meats, when available, day-old bread, or chunks of cheese. Classic free lunch items included hard-boiled eggs, served plain or pickled, providing cheap protein that paired well with beer. Smoked or pickled fish like herring or salmon when available, offered variety while lasting without refrigeration. Potato chips, a relatively new invention, sometimes appeared alongside sandwiches. Salted peanuts became common, providing crunch and encouraging thirst. A proper saloon breakfast, when available, meant fried eggs, often accompanied by leftover beans from the previous day, along with salt pork and strong black coffee. This combination provided the protein, carbohydrates, and caffeine needed to fuel another day of hard labor. For saloons catering to more upscale clientele or located in established towns, merchant lunches offered elevated fare that would be at home in any urban restaurant. These might include leg of lamb with oysters, pork with applesauce, cream fricassee of chicken, and fruit pies, dishes that demonstrated both the cook's skill and the establishment's prosperity. However, these elaborate meals were rare exceptions. Most saloon food remained firmly rooted in practicality, designed to fill stomachs and provide energy rather than impress palates. The influence of Wild West saloon food extends far beyond the frontier era. Many dishes that sustained cowboys and miners became foundational elements of American comfort cuisine. Hearty stews, smoky beans, buttermilk biscuits, beef jerky, and fruit pies all trace their roots back to those rough-hewn saloon kitchens. The techniques developed in saloon kitchens, like slow cooking tough cuts of meat, preserving food through salt and smoke, stretching ingredients to feed crowds, became integral parts of American cooking traditions. These methods, born from necessity, created flavors and textures that remain popular today. The saloons are gone, but their legacy lives on in every kitchen where simple ingredients are transformed into satisfying meals, where community is built around shared tables, and where food serves its most fundamental purpose, bringing people together and giving them strength for whatever challenges lie ahead. Now I want to hear from you. If you could step into a Wild West saloon today, which of these frontier foods would you be most eager to try? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through frontier food history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got plenty more culinary adventures coming your way.